He was hunted, betrayed, and burned alive, all for one dangerous idea: that the Bible should be read by everyone, not just the elite. William Tyndale's mission would forever change the course of history, but it would also cost him his life. Why did the powers of his time fear his translations so much? And why did they stop at nothing to silence him? This is the story of William Tyndale, a man chosen to reveal the light. A man whose destiny was to translate the sacred word of God into English for the first time. Join us on this journey of rebellion, faith, and ultimate sacrifice. At the dawn of the 16th century, Europe was not only steeped in religious tradition, but in a spiritual fog. The Bible, a book containing the light of divine truth, was locked in a language few could understand. For centuries, the Latin Vulgate had been the only approved version of the scriptures, recited by priests in a tongue foreign to most. It was into this world that William Tyndale was born, a world where the Word of God was, for the common people, shrouded in mystery. Tyndale was not merely a scholar, he was a man on a divine mission. From his youth, he was fascinated by the scriptures, and as he studied theology at Oxford and later at Cambridge, he found himself questioning why such sacred knowledge was hidden from the very people it was meant to guide. He saw the barriers between the people and the divine truth as unacceptable. In his heart, he knew that the light must be revealed. Driven by this sacred calling, Tyndale vowed to make the Bible accessible to every English-speaking soul. He famously declared, "If God spare my life, ere many years, I will cause a boy that driveth the plough to know more of the scriptures than the Pope does." This was not just a bold statement, it was a prophecy of his life's mission. Tyndale's path was not to simply replicate what had already been done. He sought to return to the roots of divine wisdom. For centuries, the Church had relied on the Latin Vulgate, a translation made nearly 1,000 years earlier. But Tyndale, with his deep understanding of languages, knew that much of the original meaning had been lost or altered. To him, it wasn't enough to simply translate from Latin. He needed to go deeper, to unlock the original tongues of Hebrew and Greek. He immersed himself in the ancient languages, diving into the heart of the scriptures, determined to uncover the truth. Each word he translated was a prayer, a moment of connection between him and the divine source. He envisioned a world where the common man could hold these truths in his own hands, read them in his own language, and feel the breath of the divine in the words themselves. For Tyndale, this was more than translation. It was an act of spiritual restoration. He believed that by returning to the original languages, he could restore the purity of the scriptures, cleansing them of the errors that had accumulated over centuries. His work was guided by a higher power, and he was convinced that he was fulfilling God's will. Tyndale's work was nothing less than revolutionary. With every page he translated, he was unlocking the mysteries of the divine and handing them over to the people. He knew that the Church would not allow this without a fight. They would see his translation as a threat to their power. But Tyndale was undeterred. He saw the scriptures as a direct line between God and humanity, and he believed it was his sacred duty to clear the path for others to walk. His translation of the New Testament was groundbreaking. It was written in clear, simple English, a language that could be understood by farmers, craftsmen, and even children. Tyndale's goal was to ensure that the Bible was accessible to everyone, not just the educated elite. He knew that once the people had access to the Word of God, It would transform their lives in ways the church could not control. Tyndale's translation was not just an academic exercise. It was a spiritual revolution. He was aware that his work had the power to challenge the very foundations of the church's authority. By placing the Bible into the hands of the people, Tindale was giving them the tools to question, to interpret, and to connect with God directly, without the mediation of priests or the hierarchy of the church. This was the hidden power of his words, and it was this power that the church feared most. As Tyndale's vision became a reality, so too did the danger that surrounded him. In England, translating the Bible into English was considered heresy, a crime punishable by death. Tindale realized that to fulfill his mission, he would need to leave his homeland. So, in 1524, he fled England, becoming a man without a country, a spiritual exile on a mission of divine importance. Tindale wandered through Europe, always in the shadows, always moving, avoiding the agents of the church who were hunting him. He found refuge in cities like Hamburg and Worms, where he could work in relative secrecy. But even in these foreign lands, he was never truly safe. His life was constantly in danger, but he continued to translate, driven by his faith and the belief that God was guiding his hand. Despite the risks, Tyndale's work flourished. He printed thousands of copies of his English New Testament and smuggled them into England. These books were hidden in sacks of grain, barrels of flour, and other everyday goods, distributed in secret to those who longed to read the scriptures for themselves. The church tried to stop the flow of these forbidden texts, but the word of God was already spreading like wildfire. As Tyndale's translation spread throughout England, it did not go unnoticed by the authorities. The church and the crown saw his work as a direct threat to their control. They understood that if the common people could read the Bible for themselves, they would no longer rely on the clergy for interpretation. The power structure that had held Europe in its grip for centuries would begin to crumble. Tindale became a marked man. Church officials branded him a heretic, and the English government issued orders for his arrest. Agents were sent to track him down, moving across Europe in search of the man who had dared to challenge the most powerful institution of his time. But Tindale was elusive, always one step ahead. He moved from city to city, from hiding place to hiding place, continuing his work in secret. He knew that if he were caught, it would mean certain death. But the threat of execution did not deter him. He believed that his mission was divinely ordained, and he was willing to pay the ultimate price to see it through. In 1535, Tyndale's time ran out. Betrayed by a trusted companion named Henry Phillips, Tindale was arrested by agents of the church and imprisoned in the castle of Vilvoorde, near Brussels. For over a year, he was held in a cold, dark cell, awaiting his fate. Even in his imprisonment, Tindale never recanted his beliefs. He knew that his work was more important than his life, and he remained steadfast in his faith until the end. On October 6, 1536, Tindale was led to the stake. As the flames rose around him, his final words were a prayer. "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." In that moment, Tindale was not pleading for himself. He was praying for the future, for the people he had given his life to serve. Tyndale's work did not end with his death. Even as his body was reduced to ashes, his translation continued to spread throughout England. The English New Testament that he had created was considered a forbidden book, yet it found its way into the hands of thousands of people who had never before been able to read the scriptures in their own language. The church did everything in its power to stop the spread of Tyndale's Bible. Copies were seized and burned in public squares, and anyone caught with a copy faced severe punishment. Yet, the more the authorities tried to suppress the book, the more people sought it out. The forbidden Bible became a symbol of resistance, a beacon of hope for those who longed to understand the Word of God without the Church's interpretation. Smugglers risked their lives to bring the Bible into England, hiding it in barrels, crates, and bundles of goods. These Bibles were passed from hand to hand, read in secret gatherings, and cherished by those who understood the magnitude of what they held. Tyndale's translation, once forbidden and feared, had become the catalyst for a revolution that would change the course of history. Tyndale's death was meant to silence him, but it only amplified his voice. His final prayer, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes," was answered just a few short years after his death. In 1539, King Henry VIII authorized the publication of the Great Bible, the first authorized English translation of the Scriptures, much of it based on Tyndale's work. Even more significantly, in 1611, the King James Version of the Bible was published, incorporating much of Tyndale's original translation. The King James Bible became the most widely read and influential book in the English-speaking world, shaping the spiritual and cultural lives of millions. Tyndale's legacy is not just one of words, but of sacrifice. He gave his life so that the Bible could be read by all, and his work continues to inspire generations. Today, millions of people around the world hold the English Bible in their hands, unaware that the words they read were made possible by the bravery of one man who is willing to challenge the darkness and reveal the light. William Tyndale's story is one of bravery, faith, and sacrifice. His burning at the stake was meant to silence him, but instead, it lit a flame that has never gone out. His translation of the Bible changed the course of history, and his legacy lives on in every English Bible read today. Thank you for joining us on this fascinating journey. If you found this video enlightening, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more insights into biblical stories and their hidden meanings.